You know, I'm old enough to remember when dollar stores still sold things for $1. Good luck finding anything for $1 at a dollar store anymore. At some point, they're going to have to change their names. Family Dollar, Dollar General, Dollar Tree. No. If you're selling things that are more expensive than $1, it's not a dollar store anymore. It's a dollars store. I'm old enough to remember making prank phone calls on payphones. Sure, you could waste your quarters on a video game at the arcade, but, you know, it just doesn't seem like you're wasting your money when you're on a payphone making prank phone calls with your friends. There's no guarantee you're going to win the game anyway. You always win the prank phone call, though. Be kind. Please rewind. I'm old enough to remember when it was still legal to smoke in public buildings. Grocery stores, the mall, some waiting rooms, restaurants, bars. Last time I went to a bar, it smelled of disinfectant. Now, I haven't been to a bar in a long, long time. Last time I went to a bar before that, it smelled like stale cigarette smoke and stale beer. I'm old enough to remember when the tap water in Flint, Michigan was still safe to drink. It just smelled like an indoor pool because of all the chlorine. I'm old enough to remember writing in cursive. It's sad, isn't it? An entire generation of men don't know how to write their names in the snow anymore since they don't know cursive. Rotary dial phones and non-digital clocks with hands. Blue jeans with holes in the knees and corduroys. I'm old enough to remember being able to kiss girls at school without getting a criminal record. Well, sure, sometimes you get in trouble for it. Not arrested, though. No criminal charges. I'm old enough to remember beepers and pagers. If you happen to own more than one of them, people assume you were a drug dealer. I'm old enough to remember roller skating. You know, old school style. Not rollerblading or inline skating, but I mean the old school roller skates. 2 wheels up front, 2 wheels in back. All you needed were some handicap hot fries and a can of RC Cola. I'm old enough to remember when people didn't pretend to be offended by everything, just to present themselves as morally superior. I'm old enough to remember when rain was a bad thing. At my age, good, it's raining. We needed it. I'm old enough to remember when fast food was affordable. I'm old enough to remember when cameras weren't digital. You had no way of knowing if your pictures turned out or not, until after getting the film developed. I can't even tell you how many of my childhood pictures had a blurry image of my mom's finger in the corner. I'm old enough to remember when your soft drink and your video game console was a lifestyle. Yeah, it defined who you were. Either you were Coke or Pepsi, Nintendo or Sega. I'm old enough to remember small portraits on American currency. Not just the $1 bills and the $2 bills either. I'm old enough to remember Saturday morning cartoons. We didn't have a Cartoon Network. If you want to watch cartoons during the weekdays, you pretty much had to get lucky. All we had was Saturday morning cartoons. I'm old enough to remember before the internet, when you did a book report, you had to use actual books. I'm old enough to remember when lady teachers weren't attractive and didn't sleep with their students. But in the off chance that it happened, the boys are smart enough to keep their fucking mouths shut and not send their teacher to prison. I'm old enough to remember when my hair wasn't turning gray. VHS. Cassettes. Portable cassette players. Yep. I'm old enough to remember when the cool person on the block had both Nintendos. Super and regular. And the coolest kids knew all the secrets to Super Mario Brothers. And a few of them had actually beaten the game and saved the princess. Speaking of video games, I'm old enough to remember when Princess Toadstool was Princess Toadstool, not Princess Peach. And King Koopa was King Koopa, not Bowser. And Dr. Robotnik wasn't Eggman. He was, shall I say it, Dr. Robotnik. I'm old enough to remember when video game characters still had their North American names. In recent years, they've reverted back to using the original Japanese names. Princess Toadstool became Princess Peach, and, you get the idea. I'm old enough to remember when cigarettes didn't put themselves out. I'm old enough to remember when the best girls, the sexiest girls, the most desirable girls smelled like cigarettes and body spray. Let me guess. Strawberry, kiwi, and Marlboro Lights. Am I right? Let me guess again. Your drink of choice is Bud Light or Busch Light? I don't know about that. Light beer is for lightweights and underage drinkers. Don't get me wrong, I like Busch, but not that kind of Busch. You know what I mean? I like to eat the Busch, not drink it. I'm old enough to remember being bored to tears when people who are older than me tell me about their life, how things were better. Oh wait, isn't that what I'm doing right now? I apologize. Scroll on.